Okay, so having done over 150K in sales in a month, there's one secret I have for hitting bigger numbers. And I say secret in quotes because it's not really that much of a secret, because it's something that scares a lot of people more than it is something that people don't know. But once this clicks, you will make way more money in your business. Now, maybe you've heard this, maybe not, but what gets you from point A to point B doesn't necessarily get you from point B to point C, right? But there are things that you learn when going from point A to point B that can help you on your journey from B to C, right? And there are really two things that I want to talk about here. Now, one thing you learn when scaling your agency from 10 to 20, $30,000 a month kind of thing is that volume is important, right? It all comes down to the numbers. Are you getting enough leads? Are you getting enough calls? Is your show up rate on point? Is your close rate on point? Is your overall return on your marketing on point, right? Are you hitting your metrics, right? So what most people do when they're going from 0 to 10, 20, 30K per month is they use outreach, right? They're doing cold email, cold DMs, cold calling. Some people use paid ads, although it's a lot less common to get to 10 or 15 or 20K per month. And generally speaking, people rely more on outreach, right? And outreach is very inexpensive, and it's relatively easy to close deals when you're doing outreach, or it's quite easy to close deals when you're doing outreach. But one thing that a lot of people have to learn, especially between the 0 to 10K per month mark, is that volume is important, right? How many messages are you sending? Are enough calls even coming in for you to be able to close X number of deals, right? Because if you're closing at 45%, honestly, there's something off. Like odds are your pricing is too low, or something, you should definitely be scaling your marketing at that point as opposed to just trying to increase your close rate, right? Because there are diminishing returns and you can get a higher growth rate or growth percentage by increasing your marketing efforts rather than increasing your close rate from 45 to 50%, for example, which is really just not necessary considering KPI is about 20%. So again, one of these big lessons that we learn in this range is that we need to send more volume. Now, in this range, the thing is where a lot of people trip up is that the same thing applies. People will hit their first 10K month and they want to do 30K per month, but either they run into problems with their outreach where they're burning through lists, they can't get that much volume going, or maybe they want to start running ads. And this is where a lot of people make that mistake or make this mistake is they start running ads, right? Because they realize they can't rely on outreach to get to the next level. So when they start running ads, what happens, and this is especially true in smaller niches or in niches where outreach is a little less common, so to say. So what they'll do is they'll start spending, let's say, $30 a day on ads, maybe $50 a day on ads, right? So $900 to $1,500 a month on ads. And they want to get the maximum return on ad spend possible because they want to crank that number as much as possible and then scale a really high return, right? So what a lot of people do out the gate when they're doing 10 or 15 or 20K per month is they want to be seeing the 15 times ROI that they're seeing on their cold outreach with their ads. And so instead of focusing on spending more money, they're focusing on, once again, the same mistake that people make when going from 0 to 10K per month, which is they're focusing on how do we just improve this little system that we have on our existing volume instead of increasing the volume, right? You want to maximize your spending tolerance with ads. Now, we don't want to spend more when the return's not there and when we don't have the cash reserves in order to spend more, right? That's irresponsible and that's going to obviously run us into problems. But you're not going to scale your business to the numbers you want to scale to if you're constantly chasing a 17 times return all the time and not willing to spend $10,000 per month on your ads, right? Because if you look at this simple math of, once again, you look at a 40% or 45% close rate in a similar way, if you're seeing a 10 times return on your ad spend at $1,000 a month, but a lot of people just don't want to spend that extra money and they're scared to spend that extra money. Now, one thing that I would encourage you to do is, well, for starters, you can, just understand this perspective that is you can always just turn your ads off if they're not working, if they're not giving you a return, right? And the more tries you give to something, the more likely you are to succeed because you learn, right? We're humans, we learn. As long as you're consciously putting an effort in and trying to make improvements over each time that you're running your ads and that it makes sense financially for you and so on and so forth, it's smarter to spend more and take more at bats, so to say, right? Because you're just more likely to succeed in the end that way. Now, one thing that I love that incentivizes me to spend more money on ads is I have a travel rewards credit card. Some of you may have them, some of you may not, but I strongly recommend it. This isn't financial advice by any means. I'm not certified or registered as anything, but getting a travel rewards card gives you more flight points. So a lot of us want to travel, right? Especially if we're working in remote businesses, we can travel. So it's a really nice incentive to be able to fly wherever you want. And the more you spend on ads, the more flights you can have per year completely for free. You can get into the nicer airport lounges, et cetera, et cetera. And when you really start to spend a lot of money, which is what I'm starting to get into now, that's where you can start unlocking business class flights completely for free, or just about, right? Which is really cool. So that's a nice little incentive that can help you, go from your 10, 20, 30K per month to hit your 100, 150, 200, et cetera, is just incentivizing yourself to spend more money on ads, again, provided the return is there and provided it financially makes sense for you. Now, the second thing I wanted to talk about is going back to A to B on this second thing. There's one thing that you don't learn when going from 10 to 0 to 10, 20, 30K per month, especially if you're running cold outreach or some linearly scalable system. What I mean by a linearly scalable system is a system where, at X dollars of spend or X dollars of inputs, you put $1 in, you get $10 back, for example. When you double that $1, you spend $2, you're going to get $20 back, provided all other variables stay the same. What happens is when people, they do that to get from 0 to 10K per month, they just simply send more outreach. They have a VA or they have Instantly or whatever else it is that they're doing. They hire more cold callers and they just have more volume going through the system, and their returns remain very consistent. This I experienced firsthand when going from 0 to about 20, 25K per month. But when you turn ads on and you want to go from point B to point C and push your 7 figures, push your 100, 150K per month plus, that's where when you're increasing ad spend, there are diminishing returns. So if you're spending $3,000 a month or $100 a day on your ads initially, you might be getting a 10 times return, right? And you might be pulling $30,000 a month into your business. But if you quadruple your ad spend, that 10 times return, right? So now you're spending $12,000 a month. That 10 times return might get cut in half, and now you're getting a 5 times return on your 12,000, which is $60,000 a month, right? So you're spending 4 times as much, but you're only making twice as much. And that's where people start to go, oh no, I want to have the higher returns. I want to crank my margins as much as possible. And the thing is, that's just not exactly how ads work. The more you spend, the more expensive it gets. And to give you a real industry example, Gym Launch, Alex Hormozi, someone a lot of people know. His clients in the gym space, they're gunning for a 3 times return. 3, not 30, 3 for his clients, right? So they're looking to spend $25,000 a month and make $75,000 a month. So really let that sink in, right? Like you need to spend 25 grand a month to be making 75 grand a month in that specific business. Can certain people do better? Yes, but he was saying some clients are getting, a lot of clients who are scaled are getting 2 to 3 times returns on their ad spend. So when you look at it that way, it's like, geez, well, in the agency space, what you can look at pretty realistically at scale is about a 5 times return on ad spend. If you have better LTVs and so on and so forth, these numbers can change and everything like that. But a 5 times return on ad spend at scale is something you can look at. So if you want to make 100K a month, you're going to have to get to a point where you're spending 20K a month on ads. It's just that simple. So really, like a lot of people just get caught up on not spending enough, or they get caught on optimizing their margins, right? Or when they see that they try to scale and there's some diminishing returns, they get a little bit scared away, they back off a little bit, and they don't end up hitting these higher numbers, these higher revenue numbers, because again, they're just not getting the returns that they're chasing, but they don't even know what returns are realistic to chase, right? So again, if we look at, some of the highest return, you can get a 10 times return at scale, don't get me wrong, right? But it's generally speaking more worth your time in the beginning, especially if you're not good enough at sales yet, or if you're not good at marketing yet. You want to get more repetitions and you want to write more ads, you want to take more sales calls so that you can get better metrics, so that you can close higher, so you can get more paid up front if you're doing pay in fulls, for example, and so that you can just get better at copywriting so that you can reduce your cost per call, because there is still optimizing that can be done. And generally speaking, in the beginning when you're newer, your returns are going to be the lowest at that point because you're the worst you will be at advertising, unless you just give up advertising for 5 years and then come back and forget everything and the whole market's changed. But in the beginning, it's very common for people to see a 2 to 3 times return on their ad spend out the gate, right? Very, very common. So if you go in with this attitude and you understand that, and you look at it more from a lens of optimizing this over time and while increasing spend, because more spend, again, gives you more repetitions, gives you more practice, and gets you better faster. So you want to spend more, again, provided the return is there. You don't want to be scaling something that's like losing money on cash in the first month or anything like that. You don't want to do that. Unless you have significant cash reserves and this is a really tiny percentage of your money, then sure. But you really need to pay attention to all these variables and look at what makes the most sense to do right now. But the first thing we want to do is look at your spend, right? We need to make sure we're spending more, because the more you spend, the more calls you get, the more deals you're going to close. And then the second thing we want to do is make sure we're not optimizing for ridiculous returns, but rather we're optimizing for sizable returns that are consistent and very strong, but nothing astronomical. And we'd rather, only optimize to a certain extent and then scale, right? We need to pay attention to what we're looking at improving. What's the bottleneck in the system right now? If your close rate sucks, we don't want to scale spend unless you can afford to scale spend and get yourself more practice on sales calls, right? Then when sales calls are locked in, can you handle fulfillment? If you can't handle fulfillment, you don't want to scale. But if you can handle fulfillment and you're getting, let's say, your 5 or 6 or 7 times return, great, now it's time to increase spend, right? So we want to look at all of these variables and look at what's the bottleneck right now, what do we need to work on, what do we need to focus on, and what's going to get us to that next level. So spend more on ads is my recommendation. And again, we want to make sure we're not optimizing for crazy returns. So that's about it. If you want to work more closely with me to help you either go from 0 to 10, 20, 30K per month, or you want to go from 10, 20, 30 up to 100 plus, you can book a call with me in the description. Otherwise, click whatever's popping up on screen now, and I'll see you there.